Okay. This is just too funny.
It is.
Wait, hold it. Okay, hit go, hit the
Yes.
here. Okay, and now it'll catch up with me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Hello, if you're listening out there and you've heard some laughter, this is the Dr. Elisa Show. This is on KUHS Denver, the stream. Okay. We should be live. And actually, I'm going to need a minute because I'm getting an echo. So, thank you for joining me. This is the Dr. Elisa Show. It is Mercury retrograde, and we are having some technical difficulties. This is
Are you on this one or which one?
no, it's echoing off of here. I'm listening to myself here. Do I turn this? Okay, hang in there. Hang in there, everybody. This is what you do when technology just messes with you a little bit. But I don't do these, right?
Yes, you can.
Do I turn these up too?
Pretty good. Did you turn them up? I turned that up.
Not yet, because I was waiting. So, if you don't know astrology, let me just tell you that Mercury retrograde is Mercury is the planet that governs communication, and right now it is retrograde, which means communication is a bit messed up. However, we are going to fix this and get through this.
Where's she at?
And let me just check. Dr. Allie Hill, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, cool. But now I can't hear her.
Yeah, you can. Barely. I'm gonna put it up there.
Okay, it's also here. Okay, so we are going to have a little bit of a interesting show because of these technical difficulties, but honestly, I'm going to let Dr. Hill do most of the talking, and it's going to be amazing. Okay, all right. Okay, so just so you know, what's happening in the studio is a little bit of an echo, and so we're going to be creative in here. This is the Dr. Elisa Show. It is KUHS Denver, the stream. Please bring your sense of humor to the show, as well as really wanting to learn a great deal about what an amazing business coach, executive advisor, mentor, speaker does. And I'm going to not even bother with anything about me and then just jump into this. So if you are, if you want, the best way to interact is to go to Facebook, and we are live on Facebook. We should be live on Facebook. We'll be streaming there in a minute. And I have an amazing guest. So Allie, thank you for your patience. Here's what I want to do, and I'm going to let you talk, is I want to tell you that something amazing about you and something that I find unique is that you work with women. I'm going to let you talk about what you do in an incredibly heartfelt way. You don't do the typical let's make you popular and on social media. Let's not do that. Let's find what's inside of you, inspire it, and bring it out. You are truly invested in changing the lives of women. Can you just talk about your journey so I can listen to you and not worry about what's happening in the studio?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on the show today. You know, we are in this extraordinary time period, not only astrologically, but also in terms of our communities and our culture, in the sense that COVID really exposed a lot of what I call the cracks in the foundation of our society. It exposed the challenges people have around education for their children, child's care for their children. It exposed how a number of people who really thought safety and security were the promises of their employers, only to find, especially for women, that between February and December of 2020, 5.4 million women left the workforce. Some of them lost their jobs. Some of them left because the tenuous house of cards that they had built around child's care and their careers was really untenable when all of the pieces started to crumble. And so I say this as the precursor to why it is that I do the work and how it is that I do the work. I really and truly believe that entrepreneurship for women is the key to our political, economic, and social equality. And I think that the past few years have shown us the myriad ways in which society, as it was created, is not necessarily beneficial for most, and certainly not beneficial for people who are not the privileged inside the patriarchy or the privileged inside a white supremacist society. And so when you talked about how I really want to invest in women, it's because I believe that when they bring their full selves to their work, when they can work with integrity, when they can define what success looks like, when they can choose the people with whom they work, when they don't have to hide their motherhood or hide that they are caring for aging parents, that is when they are going to feel their fullest selves. And that's when they are going to do the hard work in our world of repairing it and shifting the paradigm of what it looks like. And so this journey for me has been one that has spanned working in public-private partnerships, inside public-private companies, working with government. It has spanned working in the nonprofit sector. I really and truly have been on a quest to find the place and space where women will have the autonomy, the financial freedom, the social clout that they need. And I stumbled upon entrepreneurship years ago, having really never thought that for-profit business was the answer, right? I was one of those people who thought it had to be the philanthropic community or it was going to be government policy. Both of those have places in our worlds, but I actually don't believe they're the answer. The answer is women investing in themselves and their own businesses.
Thank you. This is like amazing. It's so funny in the studio, I have to tell you, because just so you know what's going on in here is I have a lag. And so I'm reading what you're saying. I'm kind of hearing what you're saying, but it's lagging behind and we don't want an echo. So, so thank you for playing with me today and getting this to work. Let me, here's what I want to talk about. When you and I have private conversations, you have so many unique ways of talking about what you do and what you help women do that it's profoundly inspiring. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about those and for people to hear this. So what I'm going to do is just try to kind of guide you through that, but I want you to also feel like this is your opportunity to expand and explore a little bit as you speak, because sometimes while we're articulating a thought, something else occurs to us. And I know you're an incredible speaker because I saw you on TEDx. So here's what I want to start you with. you talk a great deal about helping women center themselves in the narrative of their life or their business. And that is something that always makes me pause. And I'd love for you just to expand on that and tell us what you mean by that.
Sure. I'm wondering if I'm supposed to wait until the lag ends, but I'm going to start speaking now. So when I talk about women centering themselves in the narrative of their lives and their businesses, this really comes from my deep understanding as a sociologist of how traditional gender socialization impacts on women's ability to focus on themselves without feeling selfish or self-involved. When they are raised to constantly put other people in the forefront, it is very hard for them to actually consider their needs first. It's literally becomes antithetical to their instinct. It almost changes the way that they engage with other humans. Their first thought is, what does somebody else need? Not what do I need? And where this really trips them up, especially in business, is it can end up in a situation where they create a business that they don't actually love, that they don't actually enjoy, that they have done because somebody else said, you're great at this, or other people really need this and you know how to fix it. You should do that. Or what is the customer need well beyond what I'm even interested in offering? Because at some level that servant leadership gets bastardized and it looks like sacrificial leadership, which is not what it should be. And so what I do with women is really work to kind of deprogram them outside of this concept of putting people first at their expense. We need to be empathetic. We need to be emotionally intelligent. But first and foremost, we need to be authentic, right? If there is an order of operations around emotional intelligence, we need to know ourselves first. That is when we can be excellent and incredibly powerful in relationships with others. But for women, for a really long time, it's been backwards, right? And so I think that that is where I start with all of the women with whom I work, because what I don't want to have happen to them is what Zainab Salbi speaks about in her book, Freedom is an Inside Job. She is a woman who started Women for Women International, incredibly successful. And she said she found herself many years in wearing the crown on her head and the shackles around her feet. She was the CEO and the founder, but she didn't enjoy it anymore. And she felt imprisoned by the thing that she had created. So one of the things that I do when I center women's stories in the narrative, when their lived experiences matter just as much as their business idea, I am keeping them from the trap of creating a business that on paper everybody loves and in practice they resent every day they have to do the work.
Wow, that's so interesting. There is a book by Harriet Rubin that I've read some of her stuff, but I'm reading another one right now, the Mona Lisa Strategy. And she speaks of some of the things you're talking about, that women have to learn to stop acting in a certain way. And she even talks about being the queen versus acting like the queen so that you're not trapped by the roles. So it's kind of a fascinating topic about finding our own authenticity in that. And really women embracing their own narrative. So thank you. With that narrative, and you talked about sort of the servant leadership, I know you also used this great analogy, and I can see now where you built it with the women, how we carry so much with us, right? You talked about women carrying rocks in a pack. Let's leave that story in, because I do believe that that's the old narrative we're trying to leave behind. Can you go there for me?
Absolutely. So one of the analogies I like to use when I speak about these gendered stories about ourselves is this idea of wearing a backpack full of rocks. So that backpack is very heavy, as you can imagine. it weighs you down, it bows you forward, right? It makes you feel like you can be less agile, certainly move less quickly, let alone be able to pivot. And the thing about this backpack is that we often don't realize that we're wearing it because we never consciously put it on. So what I try to do is raise awareness about this backpack and consciously ask women to take it off, to recognize that they were mistaken in thinking that the way their life had been was their lot in life, to want more, right? This concept of enoughness. We are not solely enough. We are more than enough. We deserve more than enough. We should ask for more than enough. Enoughness is not solely our way of walking through the world. It's also a way of our saying enough is enough when it comes to the way that we have been told that we cannot be certain things because of our gender. So that backpack full of rocks, once we take the backpack off and we stand up straight and we realize we feel so incredibly light and excited and happy because we are not bowed under its weight, we then remove those rocks from the backpack, which also leaves us with a fabulously empty vessel within which we can actually pack the things that we want to carry. And I offer that the things we want to carry are our community, other entrepreneurs who can help us. We are going to pack the books that we read. We are going to pack the learning that we have. We are going to pack our integrity, our emotional intelligence. We are going to pack the aspects of our work that feel meaningful and discard anything that doesn't. So then if you think about putting that backpack on, as many things as I have just mentioned, it still feels light as a feather because those are the things we carry willingly. And then we stand up straight, we put our hands on our hips in that power pose that, Wonder Woman taught us all, and we move forward. So in that way, we have everything we need and nothing that we don't, which is what entrepreneurs need to have access to in order for us to be successful.
Do you find that when you work with women, because there's this old myth, right, that we trip each other up, that women are bad to other women. And I know that that's part of what you do, is that you're empowering each woman to on her path, and then pulling the women along behind them. That's not your language. But I do think that that's something else that you do.
So here's the thing about women mistreating other women. For many, many years, the hierarchy that was created in patriarchal spaces tokenized women. They had a quota, if you will. So it truly was, there is one seat at the table. If you want it, fight for it. So it wasn't that there was anything inherent in those women, that they did not want other women to succeed. It was, they were told they succeed at your peril and you succeed at theirs. It created a zero-sum environment where they were totally immersed and soaked in scarcity. And when you are in a scarce environment, you are not good to anybody else. It's not just the women that they weren't good to. It was, you felt at all times like your seat, that your career, that your livelihood was so tenuous that you needed to parrot those in positions of power. By the way, that also meant oftentimes relinquishing all of your feminine energy. So not only were you not in a collegial environment with other women, but you were having to parrot a masculine persona in order to feel that you were safe in your job. So it was scarcity upon scarcity. And so I feel when that has happened, very few people have understood or poked a hole in the concept that this was a systemic problem, not an individual interpersonal conflict. These were not two women who couldn't get along. It was a system that set them up to be enemies because they were attempting to steal the seat. It's like that game we played as children, musical chairs. You had to push everybody else's behind off that chair when the music stopped, or else you would be out of the game. So that is why I fully reject any, gendered narrative around women being bad to one another. I don't reject women's experiences. I am sure that they have had those, and I don't want to make it sound like I don't believe them. I 1000% believe that was their experience. However, I do not believe it was the result of any sort of entrenched or internalized misogyny. I think it was because of the zero-sum game they were set up in to fail.
And I had experience in that game. As you know, I worked for a major oil company, and women got ahead who dressed like men. I mean, I remember women coming in suits with little ties, and that kind of experience followed me in many ways to many parts of my career. And by the time I got to the point where I was a dean with purple stripes in my hair at a very conservative institution, I knew I was kind of done trying to fight that. And I think it's refreshing to look at then how women do not intentionally harm each other, but if we're trapped in a system, that it's difficult to move on. So here's what you remind me of. I think we've shared this story with each other, but what you're encouraging women to do is to look at life from a different perspective. And I love the story that at the sort of the end of the Dark Ages, before we were moving into the Renaissance, there was an artist named Masaccio, and I'm sure I didn't say that right, Masaccio. And he was the first one to actually use three-point perspective in a painting, which kept people from looking down and helped them look sort of up into depth, and stopped looking at the world through the eyes of despair. That's what you do with women, and that may not be how you think about yourself, but I do believe that's what sets you apart as an advisor, as a mentor, and as a speaker. Where have you found that difference or change with women when you are able to change their perspective?
So for me, it is critical that I change the lens through which women see what is possible for them and what is possible for their business. And so just as this painter created a compelling image that caused the eye to look in a different way, I am doing that same work in terms of possibility and prowess and potential. I am showing these women that the world around them created a voice that isn't necessarily their voice, even though they have spoken with it their entire lives. Now, for some of these women, this is difficult, right? It feels almost like you're disassociating from who you are. It's taking, it's taking down the facade. It's coming, it's unplugging from the matrix, right? And it's not always easy. Even though what I see is liberating, it can feel terrifying to somebody when you have colossally deconstructed their worldview, even if that worldview was harming them in some way. So I believe, and I really appreciate your praise and your thinking of my unique selling proposition, as we call it, or my unique value proposition, that I really do start from this perspective with women around the way in which they see themselves and they see possibility in the world. And I think that once I tear away any of their assumptions around possibility, they start to believe it's possible. You know, I always say to them, you are starting your business. And they say, yes. And I say, so it's a startup. And they say, well, okay, where are you going with this? And I say, well, we have no idea how large your business will be. So can you do me and yourself a favor? Call yourself an entrepreneur who's starting a business, not a small business owner. Why would you start talking about possibility with a diminutive adjective? It might be small now because you just started. But if you frame it as it will always be a small business, so these language choices, this is the kind of work that I think is so important for women. And that's a big part of changing the narrative and the lens through which they see what's possible.
Okay, so I was thinking about this the last couple of days, and this is something we haven't talked about, but I was just curious on your take on. It seems like so much of what people are teaching. So online, there's, I don't know, thousands of coaches, more coaches than people who need coaches probably. And so many of them use the technique that seems to me about getting popular, right? How many likes do you get? Go out there, get more likes, and it reminds me of trying to get to the popular table in high school, which I never succeeded at and actually never tried. And I'm just wondering if that's part of what women have to let go of, that popularity isn't what we're going for necessarily, that there's a different, a sense of authenticity and people almost seducing people to what we do because what we do is so unique and genuine. Does that make sense to you? That maybe you can articulate that better than I did.
Yes, I'm just waiting for the lag, but I'll start talking and hopefully it won't. Hopefully it won't override what you were just saying. So one of the things I had mentioned before was this concept of defining success for yourself and not necessarily using the traditional means through which to measure. And so I think to kind of build on what you're saying, if having a million likes does not feel successful to you, then that's not what you should be seeking to accomplish, regardless of what somebody else says is the elixir of success, right? And so going back to what feels meaningful for you. Maybe it does feel meaningful for you to earn a certain dollar amount. Maybe it does feel meaningful for you to have a certain number of people know that you exist, right? That awareness building. Wow, so many people know that I exist because of the number of views I received. Some people say the number of views I received is not how I define success. I define success on that post as to how many people interacted with me, because that to me is the real meaning of awareness, is interaction. So it's actually feeling powerful enough to say that this is what is meaningful to me versus this is what somebody else said is how I should define success, right? So I'll give you an example that's a personal example from my business. I started a book club for women entrepreneurs and founders. And all of last year, we read a book a month. We had a live meeting each month, as well as I created a static asynchronous video about the book. And I also created an executive summary in case somebody didn't have the time enough to read it, which was a PDF. And each month, our plan was to meet to discuss these books. Now, what was neat about the books was they weren't necessarily business books. They were books about women's lived experiences, because again, I believe that women's lived experiences have a lot to teach us about how we show up in business. So what I gave everybody the dates in advance for the whole year. I even sent out calendar invitations. So all they had to do was accept. And time and again, fewer than a quarter of the women who had signed up, who had paid me money, who had that subscription model that everybody tells you is the best way to earn money, did not come to the live meeting. Now, some of them told me they were reading the books. Some of them told me they were watching the videos. And I was still feeling a little bit unhappy at the end of each meeting. And so I had this moment of reflection for myself, and I realized that how I felt successful was with the number of women who showed up to the meetings to discuss the books. Even if they read them, even if they appreciated them, if they weren't showing up, I was not feeling successful in this endeavor. I had their money. So somebody would say, you made the money. Some of them were still reading the book. So if my goal was to be an educator or to illuminate for them, I was still doing that. However, I really didn't like it when I talked to a handful of women when there were dozens who had signed up. This is what I mean by figuring out how you feel successful so that you can then create another offering or something, and being extraordinarily upfront about your expectations. Because when you are the person who's doing the work, the last thing you want, again, is that crown on your head and the shackles around your ankles. You got the money, but you never felt successful because of the way that people didn't participate according to my expectation.
I love your perspective in that so much of what we hear from so many coaches, and I'm not disparaging anyone, but it is, here is the playbook. Do the playbook. And if you do the playbook, you will be successful. You're actually reaching into women and saying, change your narrative, center yourself in the narrative, that in that narrative, you are successful. Now let's go from there. And so it's a very internal to external process. And I know that what I'd like you to take a minute to do right now, if you're listening out there, this is KUHS Denver, the stream with Dr. Elisa Robin on the Dr. Elisa Show in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. So if you're feeling a little like maybe the show has a few pauses in it, just blame Mercury. We're all doing fine here. So Allie, what I'd love to have you do is talk about your programs that you offer now and how people find you. And I'd like you to go into that. We're kind of at a point where I think a lot of people are intrigued by what you're saying, and I wanted them to know how to reach you and how to work with you.
Absolutely. So the best way to reach me is to go to the website, which is soundadvicewomen.com. Or you can email me at Allie, my first name, ALI, at soundadvicewomen.com. I have made a very interesting pivot over the years. You know, I always say to my clients that I am not a sage on the stage who has figured this all out, right? I am a guide by their side who is an entrepreneur herself, who is constantly pivoting and being agile based upon what the market needs and what she wants to do. And so you've talked a little bit about coaching, and I know that you know, and I'll tell it to your audience, I actually never use that word as a noun or a verb to talk about my work. I call myself an advisor for a very specific reason, and that is because I am different than how other people operate. And I'm looking for somebody who is looking for a different kind of person. I am coming from being a sociologist. We are going to talk about your gendered narrative. Now, I'm going to help you with business infrastructure and business process and data and emotional intelligence. However, I'm going to do it in a way that I believe is the way that you will actually be able to transform in a way that is not a flash in the pan, and that is not faking it till you make it, but actual genuine confidence, because we have built not only your persona as an entrepreneur, but also the infrastructure so that you can grow from being an individual who trades her time for money, the solopreneur, into somebody who is really a CEO. And to that end, the two places where you can work with me in 2022 are either bringing me to a group of entrepreneurs or to an organization focused on women in entrepreneurship to speak on a whole host of topics around self-actualized emotional intelligence, around creating connections in our current relationship-driven economy, talking about gender and how it influences, for good and bad, our ability to be successful entrepreneurs, and really to explore these topics in a way that I believe women need to hear in order to get where they need to go. So that first way is bringing me in to come and speak. The second way to work with me right now is I created an e-course. It's called From Solopreneur to CEO, Scaling Your Business as You Become an Emotionally Intelligent Leader. It's all about moving from trading your time for money, having no vacation days, right? Being so exhausted from doing client work that you can't even imagine a time where you could take a few days off, and really moving towards becoming a CEO. What does that mean for your technology? What does it mean for your hiring processes? What does it mean for your access to capital, your use of money, getting comfortable with creating a real relationship with your bank, because you may be growing faster than your cash flow will allow, and how will you get access to different cash? Taking those calculated risks that you need, learning when to outsource and when to keep it close to something you do, because that is a big piece of it when you've built it yourself, really getting caught up in when it's the right time to delegate and outsource. All of those are inside of my e-course. It's 19 videos, 18 lessons, 33 workbook exercises. And it's really about you being intentional and thoughtful about how you are going to build a business beyond trading your time for money, beyond that solopreneurship, that always stays aligned with who you are, because you have been intentional about how to design this business in a really incredibly authentic way that is going to make you irresistible to other people, because nobody's going to be doing it exactly the way you do. You're going to splash your special sauce all over it. You are going to create so much energy that people are going to say, like the iconic line from When Harry Met Sally, I'll have what she's having, right? They're going to be picking up what you're putting down. And so that's the Solopreneur to CEO course, the speaking. And if you go onto my website, you can also download my free ebook, which is called Make Meaningful Connections. Relationships are your biggest asset. And it's all about the importance of creating deep relationships in business rather than moving through the world in a transactional way, and how that is going to differentiate you in the marketplace. So if you're interested, you can go there. That's a free download. And if you're interested in the course or in my speaking, please reach out. And you can also view my TEDx talk on my website as well.
Awesome. All of that is, and again, it demonstrates your uniqueness and how when women work with you, and I think if a man asked you, you'd probably also work with them, but specifically, I know you work with women, how you help them express their own uniqueness within a business. And as you said, so then, yeah, I want what she wants. It's what she had. It's that seductive, pulling people to you. There's a line in this book by Harriet Rubin where she said that women need to stop seducing, thinking seduction is drawing a man or drawing anything towards them. It's more like helping people understand how much they actually crave you and helping them come to you. And so seduction takes on a slightly different framework there. So you've changed your business. How has that changed your life and your approach to what you do?
So when I started Sound Advice Women in 2018, it was the fourth line business of a larger consulting company that I co-founded with my husband in 2007 called Sound Advice Consulting Services. And Sound Advice Women started as one-on-one executive advisory services. I felt at that time that the women who needed me to really go deep with them on starting this journey. And I still do have a handful of women with whom I work one-on-one. I'm just not promoting that right now because I don't have any space in my calendar. And so I originally started that work, doing the one-on-one work, in very intense ways. They were 2-hour sessions. We were in person until COVID, and then they were on Zoom. And what I found at those sessions were sometimes they were incredibly impactful because we had this targeted amount of 2 hours without any sort of interruption. But I also recognize that business happens all the time. And you can't wait until once a week for 2 hours to talk about something that has come up. And I realized I needed a more agile business model that also freed me from being behind the Zoom screen, to be honest. So I moved that work to be more agile in terms of now my clients and I work more like on a retainer basis. So whenever they need me, I can be there with a phone call or a Zoom or an email or a text message. And what that more agile business model has helped me do is be there for them, because I no longer have days of back-to-back meetings where it was impossible to find me, to be frank, in between. And it enabled me to build my own business. Because one of the things that happens to many of us in a service business who work with individuals is that we are pouring into them without actually having time to think about what it is that we want to be doing for our own business. So by changing this business model, by only working with a certain number of one-on-one clients, and I also do have a small group program that's called The Circle for 8 women, and we meet every other week for an hour and a half for a year. What all of this has done for me is enabled me to think differently about whom I want to support in the future. And that is where I then had the time to create this e-course. That was when I had the time to prepare for a TED Talk, to build a speaking career. So in my own evolution of my entrepreneurial venture, I recognized that a business model that at first seemed like a great way for me to really find clients, to have a consistent income. Neither of these things is a small thing when you're starting your own business. However, I recognized, again, going back to how I define success, that I want to change the world of entrepreneurship for women. I specifically want to focus on women in this country because that's where I'm most familiar with our laws and our economic system. And if I want to do that, I am going to need to have time in order to write and speak and think. And that means shifting my pie chart to how much time I work with individuals and how much time I have to work on broader messaging and education so that I can reach a larger audience. And that has been my own business trajectory. And so far, it feels really, really good.
So it's fascinating because what you're doing is sort of recreating yourself and then sort of looking back and saying, okay, come this way. I crossed the scary bridge and I'm good. And you can also follow me and I'll talk you across. I'll advise you on the way. Maybe it's your own scary bridge, but you can do this. And you can do it because I did it. And so there's just this lovely symmetry and synchronicity in that, I think, with who you work with and how you work with them. we're getting towards the end of our time. And so I just want to know, as I circle back to igniting a Renaissance of spirit, what is still inspiring you?
I think what's inspiring me right now is people's resilience in the face of unending complexity and change. Right now, nothing really feels like it is certain. And I have chosen the entrepreneurial path, which meant I was already probably a bit more risk tolerant and a bit more comfortable with being agile. However, the entire world has been thrust into a level of agility that wasn't necessarily native to them or something that they felt comfortable with. So I appreciate, I applaud, I honor, I'm giving grace wherever I can to people who have been extraordinarily resilient and agile. And I think what also inspires me is that the US Bureau of Labor Statistics just came out that in 2021, there were 1 million more businesses started. So congratulations to all of us entrepreneurs. We are walking our walk. We are walking our talk. So that's inspiring me as well. And I also think what's inspiring me is that there are ways like never before to amplify our message, even without incredible amounts of privilege or money. I myself am dipping a toe into the world of social media. I have people helping me because I'm realizing how incredibly important that amplification, that awareness is. So if you reach out to me, you can follow my journey, and it's going to be fun and it's going to be crazy. So that's what's inspiring me, that people are continuing to take risks, that people are recognizing that other people need grace, and that you don't have to be wedded to something that doesn't suit you anymore, as we see with the Great Resignation. And I'm really inspired by people seeking out what feels authentic to them, knowing that they also need to be connected with others to make those dreams a reality.
So I just want to repeat a few of those words you said, because that was kind of inspiring. That we look around and we realize that other people are taking risks, and to treat them with grace. And we're taking risks, and we often need to treat ourselves the same way, with a sense of gracefulness, and grace also meaning kindness and compassion. And perhaps that's one of the things you help people do. And that this Great Resignation, so many people for a while were talking about, oh, individuals don't want to go back to work because we're giving them other money. And like, no, people are seeking something more, something bigger. And as they're seeking that, they're having the courage to leave behind something that is not only financially unfulfilling, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally unfulfilling, and reaching for more. And I have to say, I find that also inspiring. So we, believe it or not, are basically at the end of our time. What I want you to do one more time is let people know how to find you, like in all the myriad ways they can find you.
Sure. So if you go to soundadvicewomen.com, you can find me there. My email address is Ali, A-L-I, at soundadvicewomen.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Dr. Ali Hill. I'm there. And soon enough, you will be able to find me in a whole host of new ways. So if you do find me via email, or you come to my website and you download my free ebook, I will then have your email, and then I can let you know when all of these various and sundry social media experiments that I am beginning will be out there, and then we can connect. I will be on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It's just not there yet.
So basically everything that's on the internet is a way to find you. or will be soon. It will be happening soon. Listeners, to everyone out there, I just want to tell you that I have spoken with many mentors, advisors, coaches, and seen the online versions and really have some experience with this. And if you are at all feeling like you either wish to launch an entrepreneurial business or you're ready to see yourself as a CEO, and honestly, I think even if you're an entrepreneur, you're inside a company, wondering how you then move to that next level, that contacting Dr. Ellie Hill would definitely be in your benefit. And again, just I'm coming at this from experience and my work with her and the way I have listened to and heard and worked with other people in this realm. That when we start with what's in the core of who we are, we're no longer trying to just get to the popular table. We're not just following somebody else's guidebook. We are creating something authentic and precious, and yes, seductive. And I want to say that Dr. Ellie Hill is the person to help you do that. So we are basically out of time. And I want to just leave you with a couple things. First off, you can find me. So first off, Dr. Ellie Hill, thank you for being on the show. You are definitely invited back, and perhaps when Mercury is direct at some point, so we don't have this odd little lag in our conversation. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, you can find me. You can find me on Amazon. Believe it or not, my second novel is out, Dark Fire. It's on sale on Kindle for 99 cents. The hard copy should be out. It's probably going to be out in time for Valentine's Day, and it would be a lovely Valentine's read, I can guarantee you. You can also find me at my website, elisarobin.com, Facebook, The Dr. Elisa Show, LinkedIn, Elisa Robin, Twitter, Elisa Robin, Instagram, Elisa Robin. I'm out there. You can find me, and I'd love to chat with you. And I am a mentor, not in the way that Dr. Hill is, but on sort of a one-on-one emergency basis. You can contact me for life transitions. And I want you to join me in 2 weeks. I have the author of the best-selling book, Joyful, Ingrid Fettel-Lee, will be on with me then. And until then, what I wish for you is that you let your inner flame burn brightly and just moving away the dark or dancing with the dark, letting it help you stay well, stay curious, and stay inspired. And Ellie, we are off. I will talk to you offline.
Sounds good. Bye.
So I got a text that